The real issue which you have is at the level at which people were seeking sarkari jobs, sarkari naukri, and that still remains a bait which our politicians give, as we are seeing in Bihar, etc. Those jobs are going to disappear in the form they are.
I refuse to believe that India cannot create jobs. I refuse to believe because of two reasons. One, the problem with India is not unemployment but unemployability.
Let's put those questions to our guests. Joining me on India Connect today is Sandip Ghose. He's a corporate leader and career coach. And with him is R.N. Bhaskar. He's a journalist, educationist, and author. Welcome to both my guests. Sandip Ghose, if I could start with you, welcome back. Good to have you on the show once again. Do you agree with Saurabh Mukherjea's assessment, where he's essentially making the point that stable salaried jobs in India are soon going to become a thing of the past, and we're entering an era of gig jobs and careers, and India will have to reimagine how it gives employment and livelihood to its people? How do you look at this assessment?
Neha, thank you for having me. Good to be on your show after a long, long time. If I may be a little critical, I think Saurav's assessment is neither original nor, you know, very, very new. Uh, he and what is it? I think it's got some sweeping generalizations and very, very, broad brush conclusions. First of all, as Manish Sabarwal, who is the founder of Team Lease and one of our, I'll quote him to say that he had said long back, in India, there is no dearth of jobs. There is a lot of work or job for people all over, and that will remain. And as the economy grows, that will only increase. But it's the form and the form of pay which you want, how you want to do it. So that restructuring will happen, but that restructuring is again happening in different at different stratas and different segments. It'll manifest in a different way. Only 2 days ago, or last week, I was addressing an HR conclave of leaders, wherein I pointed out when I started my career in one of the leading multinationals, and which was there, the slogan that company used to have in campuses is, "We don't have jobs to offer, only careers." And even before, halfway through our working life, when we were leaving, young kids started saying, when you went to the campus, forget careers, show me the money on the table, what you have to offer to me tomorrow, because I'm not interested in a cradle to grave scenario. I don't want to probably retire from your company. We'll make our call after 5 years, 10 years, depending how our growth is. And today, you see people, how not only they are changing jobs. In our generation, we changed three jobs. As I said, in tomorrow's generation, you will find people changing three careers, three different kind of careers. So I know of people who are a top-notch lawyer who has given up that profession to become a stand-up comedian, and the next day he's probably going and becoming opens a restaurant and does something. So this is at one level. The real issue which you have is at the level at which people were seeking sarkari jobs, sarkari naukri, and that still remains a bait which our politicians give, as we are seeing in Bihar, etc. Those jobs are going to disappear in the form they are. So we have to prepare people for much more vocational work, and therefore the education will change. And there are the theory today is, when I passed out of my got my degree, my father had told me then, okay, while I'm working, do whatever else you want to do. You want to go abroad, want to add some degree. Today, actually, that is counterproductive because the world is changing so fast. If you try to front end all your education, by the time you finish in that discipline, the world would have changed totally. I've seen in this case of my daughter, whom when I said the same thing, she said, "Papa, wait, let me get 4 years of experience, then I decide what am I going to do." and she took to photography. And really speaking, photography technology has changed dramatically in 4 years. Now she has gone on to do her masters, and she says, when I come back, I'll know new techniques. So this is what's going to happen. But the biggest challenge India has, I'll conclude quickly. You see, our level of skilled labor, skilled workforce is the lowest in South Asia. And when we compare ourselves with, even countries like Vietnam, or, countries like Malaysia, or forget it, China, our skilled workforce is low, and that's why you're not able to get people into that manufacturing sector. And this bit about 1%, I think that is again something which is taken out of proportion. Look at what's happening in America just now. There also is a concentration in big corporations, and that you need to have economies of scale for being globally relevant. But these people are also cascading down their wealth. You might today say, though, Ambanis have got so much wealth, but Ambanis are also creating jobs. Adanis are creating jobs. And unless they are at that level when they can be globally competitive, they can't create those jobs in India. And we need those big corporations to do that, create those jobs, and they are doing it with getting into infra, getting into other sectors. So I'll conclude here. I don't want to hog the time. So I think you have to see it in layers. It is much more nuanced, and you cannot, have a one size fits all, either a solution or, an answer.
Okay, fair enough. RN Bhaskar, come in here. Now, Saurabh Mukherjea, of course, is making the argument that salaried employment seems to be becoming a thing of the past, and we are entering an era of gig careers. Therefore, we need to rethink and reimagine how we give employment and livelihood to young people in this country. Sandip Ghose says that those sound like sweeping generalizations. But when he says there are still plenty of jobs in India, would you agree with that? Because there are many who argue today that India, with its demographic dividend, as we like to call it, may actually be sitting on a ticking time bomb of unemployment. What, according to you, does our job data currently suggest? And what do you make of Saurabh Mukherjea's analysis and the argument made by Sandip Ghose? Could you please unmute yourself?
Is it unmuted at what? One.
Okay, I think we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Uh, uh, you see, first of all, I refuse to believe that India cannot create jobs. I refuse to believe because of two reasons. One, the problem with India is not unemployment but unemployability. You have almost, take the government data itself, which is presented with the parliament. 50% of the schools are without laboratories. How do they study physics and chemistry? 80% of the schools are without internet. How do you get tuned into the global markets? And a lakh schools are with a single teacher for all classes, for all subjects. Something is wrong with the way we look at education. So the graduates that come out are people with not the skills or the abilities that a graduate must have. That's point one. So when you have such a large amount of unemployability, you are going to have face a problem. There's a second problem, and that's of the government's own creation. The first is neglect of the schools. The second is active collaboration to make sure that people remain unemployed. When you give freebies, you teach people not to work. You destroy an entire generation which stops working because they know that money will keep on coming. A larger family, you get 4,000 per head, it becomes 10,000, 20,000, depending on how large a family is. And this has not to do with religion, this has to do with economics. Family is, the more greater is the tendency to have more children. So, one is unemployment created by the government through freebies, and the second is unemployability. Come to a third one. There are jobs being created and can be created. The government's policies actually stopped jobs being created. 10 years ago, all the startups were funded by the Chinese. Who banned the Chinese for investing in startups? Yes, the Chinese are making money, so were the Indian entrepreneurs, and so were the people who got jobs. You need people who have the ability to invest and can invest quickly and can wait patiently. The West has lost that ability. Look at the FDI that's come to the country in the last 8 to 10 years. Why has the Indian FDI become negative now? Net FDI has become negative. Indians are investing overseas but not investing in India. From where will the jobs come? You can't invest in new factories. And the last one, if you want to create jobs, work out deals with countries. If you want to create jobs, work out deals with countries that are shifting low-cost jobs to other countries. China shifted half its textile production to Vietnam, to Philippines, to Bangladesh. Work out a deal with China. Please give us your low-end jobs. We'll be glad to do it. But no, ideologically, we don't want to talk to China. Ideologically, we don't want to talk to Malaysia or to Indonesia. And when someone wants to invest, please insulate them to make sure that labor laws, that local politicians do not interfere with the employment condition. The government had to do it for Apple, for Apple when it invested in India. Every politician wanted his territory, his community, or his constituency to get jobs there. You need to ease the political climate and insulate them in an SEZ where politicians and your Inspector Raj does not function. Investments will come, jobs can be created. That's it.
Okay, so Sandeep Ghosh, you want to respond to what Arun Bhaskar is saying? He's saying, of course, jobs can be created, but are not being created. Why are Indians investing more abroad than in India? He talks about Inspector Raj and the rest of it. And clearly, creation of jobs is not something that can be left to the government alone. But really, where are the biggest challenges that India faces in this particular respect?
I couldn't agree with Mr. Bhaskar more when he says that the problem is not employment but employability. You see, we are barking at the wrong tree. You find lakhs and lakhs of students being pushed into engineering and even medicine or whatever. And
And
these
subcontinent.
coaching institutes have come up, and it's an industry all over the place. But how will instead, if you were to teach them skills, today you go to hospitals, you don't have paramedical staff, you don't have nursing staff, you don't have other medical technicians. Those jobs are there. And today, I don't want to digress. You see the economics of a doctor. You have to pay capitation fee in some places of 2 crores, 3 crores to get into a college. Then you study, and when you come out, what will a normal doctor earn? Even if you're the best of physician, you can do the math. You're not going to earn more than 20, 30,000 rupees in a month if you play the straight card. So that's why there is again corruption coming in that field. You're not going to have for graduates in any case. You don't have. That's why when people say, "Oh, postgraduates, applying for peon's job or some other fourth grade job," that is going to happen. But we are not preparing. That's why, as he again rightly pointed out, people are, jobs which are getting created in Vietnam or anywhere else, that's not coming to India. Last thing, Neha, I will tell you this gig job thing we should not be afraid of. Look at your own profession. How many people who start as cub journalists end up and continue in the same manner till the end. People, all of you are, some are freelancing, some are moving from print to electronic, to YouTube, to anything else, and then some getting into Copcom and various things. You have to go on evolving. Last bit, Neha, uh, none of us are again prepared to retire at 60. One is your longevity has increased, thanks to medical this thing, but also your needs have increased. Look at the medical costs, etc. So we can't afford to retire in a salaried job at 60. So people will have to make the transition from salaried jobs, which in any case would be, people can't live on pensions the rest of their life. And once they do, they will have to get into, whether, today the fractional jobs, which people are saying is a better term for doing part-time jobs, and a variety of stuff. And that will increase. So one hand, you're finding people leaving corporate jobs and going and doing farming, and whereas farmers don't have money to work. So there are a lot of contradictions which you are having, and that is something which our politicians are not willing to address, because of populist reasons. So the people go on making these promises of giving one sarkari naukri to every family. Even if you give it, what are you doing to the country?
So, how does the political class need to address this, R.N. Bhaskar? If unemployability is the issue, if skill is the real issue, then really what does the government need to do to address that challenge? If you think it exists at the level of our education, what is the government doing to address it? And also, is unemployability the issue when you see tech giants like Amazon and so many others laying off thousands of employees across the world thanks to automation and AI?
First, look at the jobs that have been laid off. Those are mechanical jobs which can be replaced by machines. The creative jobs are not being laid off. The answer is that these people got jobs because they could fulfill the job that machines could do at a time when machines were expensive. Now machines have become cheaper, their jobs going. This is the same thing that happened in phototype setters when you had desktop publishing. It happens in every industry. Don't blame AI alone. Point two. You want to change education, and these are all government schools that we're talking about. 80% of India still studies in government schools. In government schools, we are paying teachers a certain salary, which is not too bad, not too bad. I wish it were more, but doesn't matter. Do we have any mechanism to measure outcomes of teachers? I got 50% when I entered class 5. At the end of class 5, did I get 55% or did I get 50? Did I get 45%? If I got less marks, the teacher should be asked, why exactly did Bhaskar not get enough marks? What is it that you do? And if every student performs the same way, that's a way to measure outcomes. We have not dared to measure teacher outcomes. After measuring teacher outcomes, measure school outcomes. Be prepared to give bad schools to good managements, irrespective of whether they're missionary schools or whether they're private schools. If a government school does not function well, just give it away. But with all the grants and privileges that a government should get. Point 3. Your job market can be created if you have a right policy for creating jobs. If you prevent investments, if you frighten investments away, money is skittish. Money will go to a place where it's more secure. If you frighten investments, how will investments take place?
So in that case, Mr. Bhaskar, are you then making the argument that, the much touted ease of doing business just remains on paper in India, and that is perhaps the biggest part of the problem that we're dealing with?
Look at the numbers. Where do you get a negative FDI? Did we have negative FDI for the last 70 years? Point 1. Point 2. He was right in saying that a doctor pays 2 crores of capitation fee. There are 2 philosophies for education in the world. One is a philosophy that America follows, and the UK started following, maximizing revenues for colleges. The second is a philosophy that Europe follows. Keep education costs low because it's an investment. It keeps service costs low afterwards. India's unhappily followed the American model, where your purchasing power is lower than most countries in the world. China has followed the European model, which is why 25,000 Indian students go to China to study medicine. And what does India do? When they come back after graduation, it says, no, we cannot recertify you for Indian practice. Because the doctors have formed a cartel. They don't want anyone with cheap education, good quality but low cost education coming to India and queering the market price. If the government wants reasonable services, make sure education is reasonably priced. Take every government hospital as a prime area. Give them the FSI, enter the public-private partnership, build 10 floors, get the investments there. Look at AIMS, look at the queues outside on the road. Look at Municipal Hospital in Bombay, look at the queues outside. Is that humanity? There's a man who's disabled, there's a man who's sick, making wait for 8 hours. First, ease the pain that people are suffering have. Increase the number of doctors, increase the number of hospitals, increase the number of beds. That is the first priority of the government. The government's first priority is education, second is healthcare, and the third is poverty alleviation. We've got have policies mixed in with freebies instead.
Yeah, if
Okay,
I may come
okay.
in here,
Sandeep Ghosh wants to come in here. Sandeep Ghosh, go ahead. The government needs to get its priorities right.
no, I agree with Mr. Bhaskar, but we also need to leapfrog. And here, I don't think we should be shy or afraid of technology. Look at what
Yes, I agree.
digitization has done. You know,
I agree with
digitization is your UPI, your Google Maps. Today, people can come and drive in big cities thanks to the Google Maps. So many people earlier, to get a driving license, or you had to get literate, even illiterate people are today able to, with voice and everything else, they are able to do that. Similarly, you know, your AI, we don't understand what government is doing. Have you heard of an app called Bhashini? A Bhashini is an app which the government has produced for translation, and it can be translating not just text but voice and video. It can translate. And which are the languages it is translating? It is translating, you know, Mizo, Bodo, apart from all the Konkani, Bhojpuri, and the Manipuri, and rest of it. And that can be translated, they're translating into all foreign languages. Now, if this sort of a thing becomes popularized, just like Japan has done today. Today, you go to Japan, how they are talking to people using these kind of apps, etc. So we have to let people adopt technology without getting shy away from technology. That is going to
Adopt
help us.
technology by all means, but you know, when you talk about an app like that, I'm really not sure how that addresses the challenge of unemployment. And you know,
Of
gentlemen,
course.
while we're on the topic of unemployment and you know, corporate jobs fast vanishing, I
But give me a
want your
second
thoughts.
to answer your
Okay,
question, Neha. How
okay.
will it address? It'll address by somebody becoming a tourist guide in a small place where you're having international tourists. What's happening in Japan? I went to Japan 10 years ago when communicating was a problem. Today, Indian tourists are moving there. Everybody is going there. And how are the Japanese dealing with them? They're dealing with them with these kind of apps. So these will, I'm not saying that's the only solution. The education, etc., will take time for coming in. And when you're saying skills, Indian government has been having skills mission for years, but it's a dud program.
But it cannot remain on paper. I think that's the whole
It
point, whether it's
doesn't
skills mission or ease of doing business.
work.
When it remains on paper, it helps nobody.
Absolutely, and ease of doing business is definitely an issue. But it is two part. But it still creates job. If there is money, industrialists are willing to overcome it and do that. But the problem is the cost of doing business in India is higher. Your logistics costs, your every other thing. That's why the competitiveness is not there. That's why people are shying away in favor of other countries. So all
And
those things.
frankly, you know, the elephant in the room, let's face it, corruption continues to be a huge problem in this country, as is red tape, as is bureaucracy, which Mr. Bhaskar referred to earlier, you know, when he talked about Inspector Raj. You know, as much as we'd like to believe that we've opened up and liberalized, those problems still remain. And as we're talking about these vanishing corporate jobs, presenting a huge challenge to our young workforce. Gentlemen, I want to draw your attention to this World Inequality Database report that has just come out, which says India's richest 1% people grew their ownership of the country's total wealth to 62, a whopping 62% between 2000 and 2023. Now, I want your thoughts on this, starting with you, Sandip Ghosh. It's as if you know, this report is rubbing salt into our wounds. We're already looking at a situation where job creation is not happening at the pace at which it should. And then there is this entire issue of staggering income inequalities, which in fact are much starker in countries like India, China than the rest of the world.
No, no, not really. Yeah, as I told you right at the beginning, you look at the U.S. statistics. There also is you are having concentration of wealth moving up because it's the larger corporations as it's happening. They're mega corporations, etc. But they are also creating jobs. I told you the example of Adani and Ambani. They can create jobs if they have a mega scale. Otherwise, you will not be able to compete with the other people. So as long as they're generating jobs, I'm not worried. The problem is the cascading effect, how much of it's cascading to the bottom of the pyramid. And if it is not cascading because of this lack of skills, etc., there you have an issue. I don't think per se this 1%, etc., is too much of a problem because these people are not holding, even a money holds a marriage, he's creating employment. There's a lot of employment which is created that will happen automatically. But so I wouldn't be too worried about that. I would be worried about what Mr. Bhaskar said: creating employability, upgrading skills, and as you also said, reducing the problems of doing business, cost of doing business in India. All of that has to ease if you really want to compete with the Chinas of the world elsewhere. That I think is a bigger issue than unnecessarily getting bothered by this 1% concentration, etc. You don't even measure how much money is there with the politicians. Uh, uh,
Mr. No, no, I think the politicians are included in this list. At least if you ask the Aam Aadmi and Aurat of this country, I'm pretty sure they'll tell you that they're very closely also looking at the wealth being accumulated by politicians in this country. They're certainly not exempt from that. But Mr. Bhaskar, I'll give you the last word. At a time when we are talking about a large number of people facing unemployment, does it not bother you to know that 1% of the population has managed to corner 62% of the total wealth? I mean, my panelists may not be much concerned by that, but ask the ordinary people on the street, and they will tell you that it does cause considerable heartburn.
First, why did they corner 62%? If there's something waiting to be grabbed, they'll grab it. Any business will do. The trouble is others can't grab it because a cop comes in the middle, someone comes with a handout for a bribe. The bigger guys have the clout to make sure that the bribe takers are kept away. So that is what causes the inequality. Your system is such that unless you have clout, you can't deal with this army of rent seekers. So the small man is inundated, is smothered, is beaten down by these rent seekers. Point one. Point two, the fastest way to grow out of penury is education again. Jeffrey Sachs, when he was in Delhi at a Munjal school, made a brilliant suggestion. He says India has a chance to leapfrog. Let India, every school, let every child create his own avatar, which teaches in his own language how to handle physics, how to handle chemistry, how to handle every subject. But for that, you need internet connectivity. 90% of our schools don't have internet connectivity. And there's a government that talks about technology. Go to your government schools first, make them smart schools. We have mismanaged education to make sure that people remain impoverished, so that people remain on doles. You have given them doles to make sure that they don't want to look for employment, and it blighted an entire generation. You taught them how not to work.
All right.
Your problem,
Okay, you want to complete your thought?
I just said you have actually created conditions for unemployment.
Well,
Change the
certainly,
situation.
huge issues there that need to be addressed at multiple levels. But for now, really, this is something for us to consider. If India is adding 8 million people, young people, to our workforce every year, where are the jobs going to come from? How do we find employment for these people? That is a very big question for us to address, especially if we do aspire to be a great power on the global stage. On that note, Sandip Ghose and Arun Bhaskar, thank you very much for joining me on India Connect.
Thank you very much.
All the best.
That's all the time we have on this edition of India Connect. If you have been, thanks for watching.